Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack for Business podcast.
We have a question for the audience. Are hidden profit leaks, rising trade costs, or unexpected AI expenses quietly draining your business? That's exactly what Karina will tackle on this episode of Knack for Business. She'll reveal how forensic level financial analysis uncovers overlooked profit opportunities, helps leaders navigate complex trade and tariff issues, and exposes the hidden costs of AI before they erode your bottom line. If you're ready to stabilize cash flow, scale smarter, and stop profit from slipping away, listen in. Our guest today is Karina Bell from ProfitLinz. She's a veteran financial strategist and founder and CEO of ProfitLinz, where she helps business leaders uncover that hidden profit potential and rescue struggling companies. With over 25 years of experience advising Fortune 500 executives and mid-market owners, she specializes in forensic level financial analysis, digging deep into the numbers to reveal inefficiencies, losses, and untapped revenue streams most reviews miss. Her expertise spans overlooked profit strategies, trade and tariff management. That's a big one, considering these times, and uncovering the hidden costs of AI, which is also one of the common things in these times, helping leaders make smarter and more profitable decisions. Known for turning financial chaos into clarity, Karina guides organizations through high stake turnarounds, repairing cash flow, restructuring capital, and stabilizing operations to develop measurable growth. Her work has unlocked 6 and 7 and even 8-figure profit improvements, making her a trusted partner for CEOs navigating critical inflection points. Fun fact, she also taught herself how to play the steel drum. And Karina, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Welcome. And do you have a favorite quote or saying?
Oh my gosh, thank you both, first and foremost for having me here this morning. And I have many. I'm one of those people that get inspired by quotes, but I think my favorite is success usually comes to those who are too busy looking for it. When you have your head down and you're doing what you were meant to do, success will always find its way to you.
And is there a business tagline, guys, that you work with?
Yes, at Profit Lines, we turn your data into dollars.
Very nice. Very nice. Can count those eggs and count those chickens. That's the important part. So the love of numbers, there's some folks that's their thing, some folks it's not. What brought you into the numbers and financial game and doing strategies?
Actually, I fell into it. When I was working for large Fortune 500 companies, I was tasked with optimizing operations across the organization in the different segments and sectors, and then going out to market, finding the technology to support those processes. And as part of that was to optimize the financial aspect of that sector or that segment as well. And I did that begrudgingly. I didn't like it. Growing up, it was that, oh, it was always a struggle, always a struggle. But then I was asked to come into a project just to unravel the financials. It was about a $20 million budget, and they didn't know where the money was coming or going from and to. So it took me about 6 weeks to 2 months to really get into it. And then I pushed the results back and said, oh, I'll go back to what I was doing. And they were so pleased with it that they then kind of tattooed me with it, where they started pulling other projects in that there was lacking that financial clarity. And then after a couple projects, I realized, I was like, I'm kind of good at this. And I started leaning into it. And then after that, it became a game. It's still a game. It's a game I love. And a lot of people, when they talk numbers or finances, you get that yeah, and, but for me, it's not sexy, but the results are.
I'm interested in how you got your name, and does it still fit you? Is it still the right name? How would you unpack your name for me?
Profit lines?
Corporate.
Yeah. Well, I wanted the name of the company to resonate with what it is we focus on and what we do. When I talk to people and they ask what it is I do, and I describe it, and I mentioned, management consulting, we are a boutique specialized advisory and consulting firm. We only focus on those elements that will increase the profit line of a business. And I wanted our name to reflect that. Anything else, we're not focused on. It's only those things that are going to pull the levers on the profit line of a business. Now, there are over 100 different levers in a business you can pull to increase the profit line. Most people don't know that. Obviously, we don't implement them all, but there are so many options. And when that is all you work on and that is all you focus on, that is all you do, you become a master in that trade. Now, the accounting, trust and believe, guys, you don't want me in your accounting. But the financial side, absolutely, all day long. We can identify opportunities in accounting areas. However, it would be the accounting experts that would go and fix those.
You got me inspired. 40 years ago, the only word in accounting was compliance. Everything was about making sure you weren't going to jail for last year's data. That's not you. Tell me
No,
how you broke through that. If in an industry that was all about compliance. Tell me a story.
absolutely. When working in organizational processes, we're looking at the processes, naturally, the budget and the cost were always an element of that. And it was always an afterthought, or this is how much it costs. And I would always question. I have an endless sense of curiosity. So I'm always questioning what the results. I'm questioning the source, and that's something that is a theme with me, is in God I trust, everyone else bring data. The financial side is not given the focus that it should. And I was shocked and surprised. In working at large Fortune 500 companies, the same thing applied, where we would bring the analysis, the recommendations, and the potential results, and it was only the big boulders that they wanted to go after. They didn't want to go after the other small rocks, medium rocks, things like that, which in a large business, you don't want to go after everything. However, you want to go after a majority of it. When it is working capital and cash flow that's literally hiding in your business, why wouldn't you bring that to the forefront? So for me, in every role I've ever had, regardless of whether it was a corporate role or my own, I always acted as an advocate for the organization. I had an entrepreneurial mindset from as far back as I can remember. When I was managing teams in corporate, the budget was mine. Those were my people. I needed to know where the money was going and where it was coming from. And I thought everybody thought that way. And as I worked with different leaders and I found out that no, that wasn't the case, that a lot of times it's very siloed in where they're looking and what they're focusing on. In the C suite, I think there is an unjust expectation that most C suite executives I work with or business leaders that are in that C suite role, the expectation is that they're hired to be strategic. Now, the reality is, a majority of their time, they're pulled into operations out of self-preservation for the organization. And why do C-suite tenure, or why are they so short? Because they were hired for strategy, but organizationally, they were not structured for the C-suite success. The operations was pulling them back into the day-to-day. So then they are transitioned out because they didn't meet the objective of the board. Because they were brought in for strategy, but the organization wasn't supported or structured to support their success. So they're caught between the push pull of their roles, and that expectation still exists today. And I think it's unjust and unfair because so many organizations have become very lean, and I think there's appropriate structure, and it's subjective based on the business. I might have gone a little too far on that one, but I'll pause there.
So as you're describing this, and even when you mentioned there's 100 different ways to almost leave your liver, so to speak, not 50, but 100
Mhm.
ways to improve what you got on the go. Is part of that then? Well, I got a couple of questions out of that. One, what is the unexpected thing that most people overlook typically, or businesses overlook? And the second one is it also part and parcel what you just described? This person's been hired for strategy, and there's been it's almost like scope creep. We're going to add this to your daily task, which is kind of mess up your overall game. What are the? Tell me something about that. Am I hitting it on the head or what?
You are. Is the reason that an executive is not strategic a majority of their time is because they're fighting fires. Realistically, a CFO, a COO, even a CEO, they're fighting fires if they don't have that structure, that process, that predictability in their business. And again, systems and processes, people, it's great nighttime reading when you're having trouble sleeping. However, the systems and processes, when they're put in place and they're monitored and they're managed, they create predictability, not just predictability of what each department is going to do, it's predictability of the revenue they're going to generate, predictability of the profit they're going to retain. And so the systems and processes in a business, if the business is chaotic, their financials are going to be chaotic. If your systems and processes are tight, your financials should be tight. Now, they may not be, but your systems and processes are only going to support your financials or they're going to drain them. That's one of the big surprises I see is the gap between the top line revenue and the bottom line profit and how wide that typically is with a lot of the businesses that we work with. Because a lot of and here's a reason why the reports that leaders are getting to make decisions are summaries. It's rare. In fact, I've never run into a leader that was working from line item level of detail. Now, they don't do that. They don't have to do that every day or every week. However, that's your source. When you're getting down into line item level of detail, I can tell you exactly what each customer, how much profit they're putting into the business. I can tell you exactly how much they're losing. Those are really fun conversations. I'll give you one example. We had a client, and with our forensic financial analysis, they had 366 customers. We identified 133 customers that were loss leaders for that business. 33. That was $602,000 a year that was walking out the door with these customers. The worst customer, they booked $289,000 in revenue and lost $110,000 when it was all said and done after the direct and the indirect expenses were applied. One customer pulled six figures out of a business. That is how critical line item level detail is. And that is where we do a lot of our work is in that space. We come in strategically, we're strategic support, but we get tactical. And then when we find that information, then we're developing recommendations of, okay, how can we recover this? And they know exactly how much we're going after. So it's not a guessing game. We know exactly what we're going after and how we can go get it for them.
A lot of our listeners are what I would call solopreneurs.
Mhm.
And we're surrounded by jargon of enterprise language. And
Mm.
no one that owns a business wants to say they don't have a clue, even when it's true. When you talk CFO, the guy go, is that my bookkeeper? Is that my accountant? What is a CFO? What does he do? And I don't think they know. And I think you could tell
No,
them.
absolutely. And, it depends on the size of your business. You may not need one. You might not need one. That is in I love, especially for growing businesses, fractionals. Fractionals are great because one, you can test drive them, and it's a very easy in, easy out if it's not a good fit. And two, I mean, I've seen companies in the 30 and 40 million annual recurring revenue that don't have full-time CFOs. In reality is oftentimes a small business can benefit from a fractional CFO sooner than they might think because and again, it depends on what the CFO, the scope of their responsibilities. I talk to fractional CFOs all the time that are very clear on what they do, and they're twice as clear on what they don't do. So you want to make sure you have a very good idea of what your definition of a bookkeeper and accountant is and what the definition of a CFO is. A CFO for a smaller business, they are planning and projecting, and they should be analyzing your current financial state, but they're also looking out. They're looking out for you. They are monitoring markets, whether it's very local or national or potentially global. They have people, typically a bookkeeper works with a CPA and the CPA works with the CFO. However, it depends on the expertise of the CFO and where they actually get into. Going back to the forensic financial analysis, we do a lot of work with fractional CFOs and full-time CFOs because they do not get into the level of detail we do. So it's having very clear expectations of roles and responsibilities for each of those because again, the finances are the lifeblood of your business. And I always say revenue is your blood flow of your business. And you definitely want someone that is not only watching the numbers, they understand the numbers. If it's a business owner, if the business owner is the CFO, something I see often is they don't understand the numbers or they're not getting the reports from their accountant or their bookkeeper that they should be getting. That's typically one of the first questions I ask is share the reports, share the monthly financial reports you're getting from your bookkeeper or your accountant. And oftentimes I'll get the what? There's owners that aren't even getting monthly financial statements from whoever is managing their books and their finances. So there's a lot of and you can do this with minimal amounts of structure because I know sometimes structure is a bad word, but we want to stay lean, especially as a solo in a growing small business. You want to stay as lean as possible. However, there are key functions that must be there. And especially as a solopreneur, I always encourage them. I have two priorities. Sales are your number one priority every day. You wake up every morning and you focus on what do I have to do today to generate more sales? And the second is how much revenue do I have to generate to bring in help? Solopreneurs work solo for far too long. I like to beat that drum because I see burnout so often. And when the business is generating the revenue to really bring in some fractional help.
You opened the genie bottle about bringing in help. It's been proven now that if you do a podcast, you have to say AI at least 6 times or the FCC calls. So I have a question. What is AI being used for correctly in small and medium business? What is smoke that it's just talked about, not understood? And how do you like using it?
There's a lot of questions in there. How is it being used in small businesses today? Marketing, business development, the sales outreach, automated receptionist, automated reminders, things like that. Marketing and sales, actually, it can create, where I have seen it create significant advantage is in all of those areas. Sales and marketing specifically, because of the hyper personalization it has capabilities of, if it's done correctly. One thing I warn against is don't be sloppy with it because everything you push out into the wild is your brand, is your reputation. So in an effort that you hear the same messages I hear, if you're not using AI, you're going to be left behind. You're going to be out of business in 2 years. No, you won't. No, you won't. Uh, there's a lot of noise out there, and AI doesn't belong everywhere in everything. What you do need to determine is, and this is a short analysis within a couple hours, you can determine or have someone help you determine what is the lowest investment AI solution you can bring in for the highest return. That is that is key. That is key. Whenever I talk to someone and they say, "We need AI," my first question is, "Why?" Share your strategy with me of why you need AI and where are the first places you're going to put it. Based on their response, I know how much they've invested in their strategy or where the conversation needs to go to develop a true strategy. AI is not the end all be all. It is not. It is a high performance employee. Employees need management, they need care, they need correction, they need to learn, new information as new information comes out. So AI should never be a set it and forget it. It is a high performance employee that there has to be oversight. There has to be oversight with it.
It's interesting. You've just described a couple components here. AI in itself, what's your strategy? And is it, is it a labor saving tool, or is it a dive deep into the data tool? Like, for
Mhm.
example, do you use AI as a dat to supply the dashboard so you get a sense of what your numbers are doing and then give context to the person that doesn't read the financials typically? This is a flag. And by the way, call Karina now because you're off the rails versus AI being a strategy where I wanted to attach to my software for editing documents, right? Without
Mhm.
naming a brand, you can have one that comes and helps you. And in which case or you have the local box that's sitting there with its ears on all the time. And you say, hey, by the way, if I mention its name, it'll start speaking now. No, we're not going to
Uh-huh.
do that. Is that the AI you speak of, or is this like a whole strategy? And then is it just more than just a strategy? I'm sitting there, or is that where you have an expert come in and go, yeah, let's map this out, both short and long term for the low hanging fruit and the higher to reach fruit.
Yeah, it's to answer your question, you can use AI or you can utilize AI. And there's a difference. Most people are using it, they're not utilizing it. Depending on the size of the business, you know, for instance, ProfitLinz, we provide an AI analysis for $5,000. Within a couple of hours, regardless of the size of the business, we do this for large enterprise. And oftentimes they're like, really? That's it? And I was like, yeah, that's it. Because we want to give you direction. If there's no direction, then there's no sense in going forward. But with a direction, you have a strategy. Now we have a blueprint. Now we have a priority. With AI, my recommendation, your pilot should be small. Do a proof of concept. Always start small. If we're in the small, let's stay with the small business arena. If we're a small business, do something like automating the reconciliation of your invoices to your POs. That's a big one. That's a big time suck right there. That can take weeks for people to complete, and it can be done in minutes. That's a great use case. And go through it. Whether it's you or one or two people on your team, go through it with somebody who might be working with you. If you have a technology team, they might be doing it themselves, or it's a third party that's going to do it and bring it in for you. Go through that whole process to see how you're performing, your employees are performing with it, and then see the benefit on the back end. What I do see a lot of is people are trying to boil the ocean right out of the gate. We've got to do it all. No, you don't. No, you don't. This is a cultural shift. Anything you implement with AI, and here's some additional points I'm going to hit on because I think they're so key. AI is a shift in culture. If we bring AI in, will that mean I'm going to lose my job? How are we communicating that with our staff? How are we protecting our staff with AI? How are we supporting our staff and providing them better opportunities because AI will take care of those tasks none of us want to do. The repeatable stuff, sometimes the dirty stuff. Also, what is our AI policy? Is everything inside a walled garden within the organization? Is there some things that can go out into the wild, or do we never go out into the wild? When we go out into the wild, what does that mean? Who can do it? How's it done? How are we protected? An AI policy should sit right next to your cybersecurity policy. AI is a fantastic opportunity for vulnerabilities of a business, regardless of your size. Small businesses are a big target for the bad actors and the hackers out there because oftentimes small businesses think it won't happen to me. I don't need cybersecurity. I don't need an AI policy. I'm just doing this. And it just takes one time for that gate to open into your business, into your electronic wall, and the vulnerabilities could exist.
And I'm going to ask you a question that I hope by the time it airs is moot. Right now, as we are airing or cutting this, tariffs is the big word in our culture. And I'm asking, in your opinion, is that going to keep supply lines muddy for years? Is it going to get dropped because it didn't make sense? Is it the new reality? Are we all going to have to go back to hyperlocalization and less profits? Crystal ball it for me.
Well, that's a good one. Remind me if I don't hit all of them, Wayne. Previously, tariffs were predictable. They were put in place and the management was very simple. Now, the tariff arena has become highly volatile and tariffs are being approved and then implemented within days without planning, without process, without an opportunity for businesses to respond, and they're left to react. And what does that mean? If all you don't have any other options, you pay the tariffs. And so many organizations and businesses, small and large, if you are a US business importing or exporting, you are not escaping this, have been impacted. I call it the tariff torpedoes that are literally killing businesses. And the reason that tariffs were implemented was to to force the manufacturing back in on US soil. However, the challenge in that type of and I'll say plan loosely, is it takes years to build and establish that type of manufacturing facility. Whether you are manufacturing an ice scraper for a car or you're manufacturing a microchip for computers and cell phones, it takes years to build manufacturing facilities to bring things up in that short amount of time. To actually apply heavy tariffs on businesses right now versus, say, in the future, 2 or 3 years in the future, saying, if you don't have US sourced in a year or 2 or 3 years, then these tariffs will apply. It's actually taking the money out of the economy to go build those manufacturing facilities. So what the impact that tariffs have on businesses right now is a lot of times they don't have the internal staff that know how to manage the volatility. They don't know how to manage the classifications. A lot of businesses don't realize every time a tariff changes, there's a window of opportunity to reconcile previous tariffs that have been paid to claw back money that they overpaid. We also will audit historical tariffs that have been paid for misclassifications or tariffs they shouldn't have paid at all and claw back hundreds of millions of dollars. You have to manage that with tactful gloves. Tactful gloves. We fulfilled the objective. We fulfilled the objective of our client. But for smaller companies, it can be hundreds of thousands or even $1 or $2 million or $10 million. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. 6 figures for even a small business. That's impactful. That is impactful, and that's where we can help them with that. And then there's a heavy reliance on brokers. And a lot of companies think that I gave it to my broker's going to take care of it. Most brokers just report what you give them. They're not validating the classification, the percentage of, let's say steel. Steel is a new tariff that just came in recently in August. In fact, August 15th. It was announced at 7:29 p.m. Friday, August 15th, 7:29 p.m., and it was implemented that Monday at 8 a.m. So the tariff is a multi-tiered tariff. If you have a percentage of steel in a finished product that's coming in, there's a tariff. So the manufacturer actually has to provide the percentage of steel in that product for you to report back. Now you're relying that the manufacturer's information is correct and that your broker is reporting it correctly. So you can see there's a number of touch points here. So there's a lot of opportunity for errors and misclassifications to occur. And that's where you need somebody that's focused on that. That's all they do. Our head of tariff management, that she's been doing that for 20 years. And then once you get your arms around your tariffs, then we can help you plan and forecast tariffs, even as we're seeing swings in the volatility of it. And then also, I'm going to run down this rabbit hole when you open that door. Are tariffs a part of your pricing model? Have you Have you accounted for tariffs in your pricing model year over year over year? What's interesting, what we find is oftentimes the total cost of goods sold, there are a number of points within the total cost of a good or a service that are not accounted for in the pricing model. Oftentimes, pricing is based on what the competitor is doing, or my favorite, and not what the total cost of production, and then also the market. What will the market bear? A lot of times pricing has been inherited by someone who might have done it years ago, and it's not changed very often, or it's changed based on reaction and not market data. Where some industries are, it's very productive and profitable to utilize dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is going out, when it's a consumer facing product, the market may bear a different price on a different day, a different time of year. Also with your supply chain, we help businesses set up different suppliers. Right now, that's very big. We were pulling supplies from Brazil when tariffs were 10%. Then overnight they went to 50%. Oh, hello, Argentina. Hello, Venezuela. And then oftentimes smaller businesses, and this is very risky, is they will have one supplier and not multiple suppliers. And that's where we help with the risk management aspect of it as well. So it gets really interesting. Like here in the Southeast region, we're in Hurricane Alley. The last thing I want to see is any business that has only a supplier in the Southeast region or the Northeast region in the wintertime. Can the trucks get out? Can the planes get out during winter? So you have to have contingencies and that. And a lot of times smaller businesses, they don't have the bandwidth for that. But, and again, it's that fractional aspect that you only need it for a minute to go build it and put it in place. And then you don't need it again until you have another challenge or another opportunity. But Wayne, did I hit on everything that?
Just because there's a audio podcast part of this, you made a very, very sensible thumbs up. I'm doing it by the wind. That would be lost if it was an audio. So yes, that was your thumbs up. I just wanted to add that, but you hit it
Yeah,
perfectly.
So
absolutely.
when you're talking about revenues and you talk about pricing, and then I get the dead reckoning piece, right? You kind of
Hmm.
guesstimating, and that might be a last minute thing, and you want to cover your costs and you want to have a certain profit margin. What's a good profit margin, and is it based on the number of SKUs? And then some will be higher, some are less. And is it like a coffee shop? They'll sell the coffee and they'll give a part of it away, and but the donut,
Hmm.
there is no margin, there's no fat in there except for what you're about to eat, right? And that margin's tight, but the coffee, it has typically a large swing of margin in there. How do you find that perfect, what the market bears? I get that. I've had an accountant talk to me. He says, Bernie, when you change the price, he's a French Canadian guy, so a gravelly voice, a really sharp dude, really sharp dude. He says, there's something called elasticity, and you stretch it too much, it snaps. That's it. You lost your customer, right? Because you want to keep adding the price, because profit can
Hmm.
be enticing, and getting lots of profit can be enticing, but at a certain point, you just killed the goose that laid the golden egg. How do you manage that piece?
And there isn't one answer to that question because it depends on your industry, it depends on your market, it depends on your products. Now, for companies that have a high number of SKUs, there is a SKU optimization. That's typically a common question: is when's the last time you've optimized your SKUs? Because that's a good one. When we provide a report that says these are all the products that are loss leaders for you. Now, there are intentional loss leaders, to your point. The donut is a loss leader. We'll make donuts all day. The loss is so minimal, but we're making our margin on the coffee. Absolutely, where it makes sense. What we're running after are those losses they're not aware of. And it's the L and the P and L, because in my mind it's like, why do we have an L? Why do we have an L? And everybody's looking at the P, but no one's looking at the L. And so and there are a number of companies out there, especially in consumer goods, very common to have loss leaders. But what happens when you have a lot of SKUs, people forget. They forget about the intentional loss leaders, because now we've moved to something else and they've never removed, or they never reanalyzed, should this still be a loss leader? Or should we actually cut this product right out of the catalog or
But
products?
when you're doing this whole process, when you come through with a company and going, "Hi, I've done the analysis. Here are the where you can make changes that'll help you have better outcomes." Do you have a system where, like, modeling a system where going, I'm going to add a new SKU, a new product, or I'm going to
Mhm.
go to a new manufacturer, a new supplier, and you kind of plug it in and see, you plug it in at one end of the machine, have AI kind of spin the dial, a roulette wheel, and then going, what's it going to look like when it comes out the other end? Does it,
Mhm.
to show impact either short term or mid range or long term?
Yes, absolutely, and right down to the region. Where will this sell best? Yes, yes, it's and that's all customized to the client. We come in with an AI engine, and then we customize it to the client. In fact, I was looking at one of our models yesterday, and we have a 4 quadrant, and, they're actually called cash cow, and I'm not gonna remember them all, but there's 4 quadrants where the top 2 are the ones you wanna the CEO and the CFO wanna focus on, and then the bottom 2 are one is loss leader, and I think it's profitable but low margin, things like that. And again, it's not just showing the data, it's actually, "This is what you do next." So it's where we come in and where we help is with the implementation of it. We wanna create a self-sustaining team, so they have the tools to do what they need to do and get the information they need and call us when they need extra help. We don't I don't ever want a seat in anyone's organization. We work with a sense of urgency, and there's a reason for that. When I started ProfitLinz, I had experience consulting contracts, paying $250,000 for a report that took 6 months to generate, and when we get it back, it was all the same stuff we had been talking about internally and going, "Guys, we know the what, it's the how that we don't have. How do we do this?" And that's where I said, "When I start my own business, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna shake up the snow globe of the consulting structure and the model, and I'm gonna throw it out. We're gonna come in, and our focus is on short 90-day sprints. If there are longer term projects that need to be longer term, great. But the idea is there's a problem that typically has a reasonable quick fix that we can implement, and that's our model. That's our model. If after 90 days we've met all our objectives and that you have no other problems you need help with, we shake hands, we're friends, and we'll come back when you have another challenge or another problem. We earn the right to come back every month. We do not. I'd rather work. I like working with volunteers, not hostages.
I've never seen anyone that knows so many people as Bernie. He's amazing. And
Yeah.
some people are in the enterprise model, and
Hmm.
I try to listen and I try to make it fit. But it isn't necessarily the listener I know that it can use that model, and every owner I've ever met wants to make sure he's sitting at the big kid's table, even if he doesn't fit. But I'm
Hmm.
sensing that you have a way to find a ROI, a return on investment, for companies smaller than they thought they could use you. Tell me more if this makes sense.
It does. It does because we've all started small. Every business out there started small. Some of our analytics are a bit deep and complicated, but they're not for everyone. There are a la carte solutions that we can apply. In fact, we have many contingency solutions, which I love because I love to put skin in the game. Let's put our cards on the table. Everybody put your cards on the table. And I love that because if we don't produce any positive benefit for you, you don't pay anything. So especially for that small business or solopreneur, we do work with businesses that are generating at least 5 million in ARR.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So, offbeat question. Steel drums. What's that all about?
I love the Caribbean and I love the reggae music. And I loved it so much. I said, you know what? I want to learn how to play the steel drum. So I ordered a steel drum from Trinidad and I used to play the alto and the tenor saxophone in school. So I love music. Music is always in our house. And, like most people, I sounded, a small child banging wooden spoons on metal pans in the kitchen sounded better than I did. But, like anything, I stuck with it because I really wanted to learn it, and, I enjoy it. It's one of those things I do when I want to decompress, and it really takes me away. It really takes me away. I've learned how to play it. I haven't played it well. It's that expression part that I haven't developed yet.
So you're not on a band then yet. You're working.
No, sir. Oh, no, 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 no. That small child in the kitchen might be a better hire.
So you've given us a great snapshot, Karina. And I know that you're in the southern eastern states, but we're also on this thing called Zoom that lets us talk to the world. What's the best way to reach you? And where do you like to, and you've told us about annual returns. How do we reach you and how do you serve them best?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Karina M. Bell on LinkedIn, or our website. The contact form on our website, and my email is in the footer of the website. You can contact me directly. I always want to make myself accessible. I am the CEO, however, I am an operator. I will never not be an operator. I love it. And the principal strategist, that's where I have my most fun. And we work globally. We work with businesses all over the world.
Thank you.
It's been great. Karina's taught herself how to play the steel drums. That's it's a good start to find out what that's all about. But she also helps you master the curiosity and persistence of what's going on in your business. Where can you make more inroads and have a better success? And, best fit. Look at where you're getting your KPIs and your SKUs. And if you don't know what a KPI or a SKU is, reach out to Karina. She can probably help you out in that, and then find the other hidden treasures that are in behind the scenes.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.